For the past week, I've been here at the Asheville Vehicle Outfitters in Fletcher, North Carolina, where they're building my truck, putting on the alu-cab, making a lot of modifications, and it is going to be one heck of a truck. During my stay here, I've been using the rental truck, which has an alu-cab on top of it. And actually, I camped a couple of days just right here in the parking lot. And I felt very safe. It's a nice area. It has been beautiful as far as temperature is concerned, and did get a little cold a couple of nights here, down into the upper 30s, but for the most part it's been in the 40s and 50s at night, and the days have been getting up near 70 in the mid 60s. So for November, I cannot complain. Tomorrow, when they deliver the truck into my hands, Eric Valdez, who is the president and the owner of Asheville Vehicle Outfitters, is going to give me a walkthrough of the truck and explain all of the parts that they put into it and all the effort. And believe me, it's been a big effort. I've asked Eric if I could videotape that walkthrough, and so you'll be able to see the same things that I'm seeing. During the past week, 3 days were spent with Mike Morrison of Morrison Outdoor Adventures, and he provided me one-on-one training on how to drive a truck in off-road situations. And I tell you, I learned so much there and did things that I thought a truck could not possibly do, let alone me. I'd walk down the side of those mountains back to the truck after checking out the terrain and the trail and stuff, and I would literally say a prayer that I was not going to damage the vehicle trying to get it up or hurt myself. But those trucks are much more capable than we realize, and probably are even willing to put them to the test. So the first day was, a lot of it was spent on training on how to drive the vehicle. The second day was recovery techniques, and we actually got into a situation where it was unanticipated, but we got stuck halfway up this slippery, slidey trail. It had been raining the day, and so we went up a trail that had vegetation covering on it, and I got about a third of the way up, and that was it. It would not go any further. And after trying 6 times, I was losing ground, and so we winched it up the entire side of that mountain. It just, wow, it was unbelievable. The third day, he covered things about, well, like things that commonly go wrong with the truck and field expedient repairs, how you can repair it and get it back onto the road, or at least get to a place where you can get help. Invaluable training. I cannot recommend him too highly, and he's very personable, listens, understands, and he presents very, very well. So it was worth it. And if you're getting into this and you haven't done it, that's the way to build your confidence. That's the way to stay out of trouble. Ethan, who is a young guy that works here as a mechanic, and I were talking the other night, and he mentioned that he's concerned about people that put tons of money into a truck for just going out in it a few times, and whether they can really afford that. He acknowledged that in my case, it's a little different because I'm going to be living out of this truck. There have been a lot of people coming and going here from Asheville Vehicle Outfitters during this past week to get things installed on their vehicles, to look at the vehicles. And one of them came in and reminded me of the conversation that I had with Ethan. This guy turned to me and he said, "Wow, I think you have between this amount and this amount wrapped up in that vehicle." And it kind of surprised me because he was accurate. He knew what he was talking about. So it kind of reminded me of that conversation with Ethan. I'm going to be living in this vehicle, and therefore I'm putting money into it to make sure that it's capable of doing the things that I need it to do, that it'll get me where I want it to get me, and that I'll be safe in doing so. So a good question to ask is, why am I doing this? Why would I, within a 2 to 3 month period, make the decision to put my house up for sale, to buy a truck, to research everything that I possibly can on how to live out of the truck and to move around? Well, I'm a landscape photographer. Actually, I'm a photographer, a jack of all trades, because I do weddings, I've done portrait pictures, but landscape photography is really where it's at with me. I just love the solitude of a setting sun and taking pictures, or a beautiful scene. Sometimes I worry that I'm actually so much in the moment of taking pictures and concentrating on that I'm missing out on the real beauty. But let me tell you, it impresses me. And I go back and I look at those pictures and it reminds me of those moments. And so it's just kind of a snapshot in time. Well, I look through hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures every day, commenting on other people's pictures and making notes on things that I would like to do similar to what they're doing or what I want to try to avoid. And one day I came across a picture that just blew me away. And again, this was just a couple months ago, 3 months ago. It was a picture of these sea stacks that are coming up out of the ocean and out of the sand on the beach. So if you can imagine, there's a cove, and it's kind of like this coming in at you, and you're standing here looking, and you can see the rocks and the forests that are on top of the shoreline. But the sea stacks are these columns, and there were like 6 or 8 of them coming up out of the sand and out of the water. And on the top of each one of them is a single pine tree. There was a mist coming in. There were clouds in the sky. The sun was setting, and it was just beautiful. In fact, anybody that I've shown this picture to says the same thing, that they think it's really, really beautiful. So my first thought was, well, I hope this is in North America, someplace that I can get to. And so I started doing my first thought was, gee, I hope this is somewhere that I can get to, and it's not somewhere around the world, but here in North America. I didn't know where the picture was taken, so I did a little research, and I found out that it's just across the British Columbia border between the United States and Canada. In fact, it must be only a few 100 miles, 400 miles, whatever, up the coastline there. There is another one that's very similar that's in Alaska. So then I started thinking, well, how am I going to get there? My Corvette's not going to get me there. My old Jag's not going to get me there. My Pacifica that was falling apart wasn't going to get me there. So I immediately thought, well, I need to buy a truck. And so I went out and bought a truck. And then I started thinking, well, okay, how am I going to camp? I'd like to pull a trailer or do something like that. And actually, I had settled on kind of a pop-up camper that you pull behind the truck. And I was pretty excited about it, but I held off trying to put any money down or buy it or anything like that. And a couple of days later, I had decided I was going to remove the rear seat of the truck. It's a full cab, and that's where I was going to put the refrigerator freezer in there. And I wanted to have the Goose Delete in there, which is paneling that you put in there to make it look nice. And as I was talking with John at Goose Gear, I mentioned this pop-up camper that you pull behind the truck. And he said, well, Steve, you ought to read what people are saying about it. Go onto some of the blogs and those type of things and see if it's really what you want. And he and I were talking about where to get the Goose Gear seat delete, full seat delete installed, and we decided on a place here in North Carolina, Asheville at the time, the Asheville Vehicle Outfitters. And so he had mentioned you might want to call and talk to them and ask them about their AluCab. And so he's the one that really pointed me in this direction to look at an AluCab. And after talking for a while with Eric, I didn't even need to see it. I knew it's what I needed, what I wanted. And I proceeded on faith, so to speak, with that. And after having spent a week now camping in their vehicle, I'm sold. I mean, it's really going to be a lot of fun. It's great. And I have a very, very capable vehicle. And the wide open spaces are in front of me, and I'm headed out. Follow me.